Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We are here, and once again, it is our great pleasure to be in your reality. We are gathered at the Dancing Moon on a cozy afternoon, rainy of sorts, here in central North Carolina. The date, of course, is the day after the new moon in November 23, and we are here to explore the ongoing series this year that is called The Hidden Design of Reality. And this hidden design of reality is something that will be unfurled, uncovered, during the period that we call the change over years. That would be the time period from 2013 through and including 2027. Now, for this afternoon's exploration of the hidden design of reality, we'll open up all manner of consideration. But the point we want to make first and foremost is that in the last 11 months, 11 moons that have comprised the year of 2014, so many shocking and major discoveries are being recognized. It's not that they have been made in this year. The discoveries were being piecemeal and put together with a higher organization and cooperation behind it throughout the years of acceleration of energy. And that would be the time we call the nanosecond, 1987 through 2012. Since that time, the many researchers and discoverers and clever thinkers and intuitors, inventors, they've all laid down their discoveries, some of them at great professional risk. Some of them have said, I could possibly lose all my credibility if I start really naming what I see and where my studies and my intuitions are leading. This concept can be true for almost every aspect of your beliefs on the planet. This is true in certainly the religious realms. Clergy all over the planet are scratching their heads and saying, well, look at this conflict, or this doesn't appear to match this. In the area of healing and medicine, you have advancements that are so beyond the public's comprehension, yet at the same time, people are dying in many parts of the world from lack of healthy food, poor sanitation, simple illnesses that would be nothing in the Western world. It means that on Earth all realities are possible simultaneously. It doesn't really matter what the date is. It is the environment and the beliefs of the environment that one is a part of. Nonetheless, these groundbreaking, paradigm-shattering discoveries have been building momentum. And they have reached a peak in this year, 2014, a year that we have called a turning point year. 2013, last year, was more of a decompression after the great tension of the nano years. Now the discoveries are coming forward. As we've said, in religion, in medicine, in space. There have been many people who have put their scientific professional careers on the line to speculate that the solar system has been colonized, and many are pointing to evidence of artifacts all over the moon and Mars. As our vehicle was offering you a little while ago, a book was showing pictures of seashells, very similar to the kind of shells that you would find along the coast here or in the Caribbean. These shells are scattered all over various parts of the surface of Mars. The point we are making is that if your medical system, your understanding of the cosmos, your religious systems, your understanding of space and matter are all being turned upside down, then of course this would have a profound effect on the psyche of all people, whether or not you are aware of these paradigm-shattering discoveries. Now, when a paradigm is shattered, it means that an ideology, a belief system, mass agreements, that everyone nods and says, yes, the sun comes up in the east and it goes down in the west. Hallelujah. That is a paradigm. It is an agreement. It's an agreement that's difficult to refute. You understand? In certain terms. But if you were to leave Earth and get out in space, that paradigm would not be true, would it? No. And so we are not looking to refute the various core beliefs of your reality, such as where the sun rises and sets. But we want to point out that even such a solid belief can change very quickly based on changing your location from Earth up into the heavens. What's happening to the people of Earth is that you are changing your location of how you perceive reality. Your perceptions are being altered. There are more and more humans compelled, driven, curiosity, whatever, to uncover hidden truths, unexplained mysteries about the nature of current reality. Of course, much of this is then presented to the public in terms of a distorted point of view, or sometimes a controlled point of view, through TV shows, through media of all manner, through movies, and through the music scene. The music scene today, we are talking about what you call entertainment performers and American Music Association, this kind of thing. They are doing their very best to present snippets of very far out cosmic ideas interspersed with very, very confusing, destructive behavior, all put to the tune of music. We dare say that the age that is in the room today, there are not any people here that are 30 and younger, at least if we can perceive that. Those 30 and younger, or less than their Saturn return, are being bombarded with confusion to distort the understanding and to piece together these massive discoveries that are going to change the direction of everything. Young people are always a target, whether they are preschoolers, adolescents, college age, post-college. Because if you can mold their minds young, then you will have their minds for a long time. And then it takes years and years to unravel things that are not true. Now, 2014 is a year that is chipping away at all of the pillars of society, the belief systems, the ideologies that have held your world in place for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And even though there's tremendous confusion, that these are tumultuous times, and you have to figure out, what the big changes are all about, there's a telepathy, an understanding that is non-verbal, that is moving very quickly through people. And it is this that could create, let's say, the breakthrough that you're all sensing and feeling. One way or another, you are on the verge of something very, very big. Remember that. So let's talk about, to start this afternoon, some of the things that you have discovered on your own that are part of the hidden design of reality, whether it is a personal discovery, whether it is something like I read so-and-so, there's now masks and statuettes that are found on Mars. You know, back to Mars, you have a few of those little explorer rovers there, and they are looking at the Cydonia area and other areas. Cydonia area, in case you are unfamiliar with Mars, was photographed by, we believe, the Viking or one of those explorers from the air, and shown there was a face on Mars with pyramids along the side. Others speculate that between then, the 70s, and more recent photographs, that someone destroyed the structure. It's entirely possible. It's also entirely possible that any digital recordings of the structure would be altered. It's very easy to program a computer or any type of device to fuzz out something when it is photographing X, Y, and Z, etc. These are how algorithms work, and algorithms are written to give binary instructions to the machine kingdom in terms of what you call computer. It's also possible, understand, for computers to take a stand on their own. This is one of the on the verge that you are in shocking discovery of, that it's quite possible to be taken over very quickly by machines, and to have machines who appear to be obeying the algorithms and the commands of their programmers, but you must admit your entire world is now vulnerable in a short number of decades. You are completely dependent on the whim and the cooperation of machines doing what you want them to do in terms of providing safety and water and keeping planes in the air and bridges operating and all such manner of everything. These are important considerations. And to tie it all together, just to give you the ultimate conundrum here, last time we were here at the moon, we gave a little bit of exploration into some of the very evident discoveries that are being held forward in alignment with discoveries on Mars and anomalies around Earth, that your scientifics realize the deeper they go, and the more they magnify reality, there is no solid matter. It's just space. It's empty space. Space filled with data. And that empty space inside is a replication of what is outside. So, to tie it all together, the question we are asking you as you help us further explore the hidden design of reality, what is really real? That's something good to devote a Sunday afternoon to, is it not? All right, so let's get on with it. Intend to have a lively time, energize you, light up your telomeres, light up your intuition, your codes, and bring greater understanding into the now. Who would like to begin the discussion?
Peace.
Yes.
This is Sue.
Welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Are wormholes and black holes the same anomaly, or are they different?
They would be different in terms of in terms of being specific. Yet, from your point of view, you could picture them in terms of a tunnel or a bridge that would allow energy or consciousness to move quickly from one place to another. What else do you want to know, Sue? And by quickly, we mean that movement would transcend your beliefs and your laws of understanding physical reality, which are based on space, distance, and time. Black holes, wormholes refute all of that. They confound that understanding of reality. And what's important to understand is this, people, we'll come back to you in a moment soon, is that there are many ways to move around, depending upon what state of consciousness and what belief systems you operate. People have asked us, well, why, if the Anunnaki are so super intelligent, would they and so multidimensional, why would they then operate with missiles? Why wouldn't they use interdimensional for all things? Well, let's say that there are people who own race cars, motorcycles, and Audis and Porsches, and then they may have a pickup truck. Or they may have an old Subaru around, you know, that Pleiadian car out of Japan. And so they feel like driving that. It would depend on the mood, it would depend on the weather, the circumstances, the availability of fuel. And so just because a life form may appear to operate at some of your projections does not mean that life forms do not use the various laws throughout physical and cosmic reality. Now back to you, Sue. You have something else to ask.
Well, this makes me think more about it, you know, having the realization that a being would have the option of which they would like to use to travel to another place.
You call it an option. Sometimes there are many options. You are a business owner, and so you know there are more auspicious times for decisions than others. Sometimes it feels as if you've got buckets of gold lining up and down your driveway. Other times those buckets turn to coal. And if you don't have a coal-burning furnace, it's not going to do you a lot of good. You understand? Mm-hmm. And so there are fluctuations. And this is important to understand when you are dealing with your beliefs and your understanding of what you think space is and who you think these beings are that come through space. Here's a recent integration point. Researchers in the scientific realm, and this adds to the understanding of being on the verge of something huge. Researchers are putting it together that all manner of life forms, whether it is dandelions or daisies, whether it is ladybugs, skinks, frogs, gorillas, lions, cats, dogs, eagles, turtles, ocelots, possums, you name it. They are not so different than humans. If scientifics had brought this out 50 years ago, they would be laughed out of their profession. They would be out there with those who say you can talk to plants. But now it is becoming scientifically accepted, locally in fact, that the kingdoms of consciousness, plants and animals that you share life with, are more like you than they are different from you. That animals have personalities. Some animals are nicer than others. You think, well, golly, isn't that the realm of just humans? Think about all life forms having to adapt to being in the form that they are in. You think all dandelions are alike. Let's say that there are some extraterrestrials who look at Earth and they say all humans are alike. But you know, as being a human, that yes, you are a human, but you are far from being alike. And so imagine that preclusion can be applied to every type of life form on Earth. Then cut and paste that idea and put it out into the heavens. And what it does is it makes powerful beings not so different from you. that all life forms are in a process of evolution, some far more aware than others. Many of you have had pets, yes?
Yes.
And you would admit that your pets have personalities, they have telepathic skills, and some of them are far more socially adapted and well-behaved than others. Some of them are just born grumpy, and they just have a grudge against this, or they have a one-rolled kind of idea, I'm going to bark and protect, or I'm going to elude, or whatever. And so your intuitions about what you have been picking up on are becoming more finely tuned. And there's an old saying, as above, so below. Look to understanding the small world below, and you will understand the cosmos in greater capacity. What else? Anything, Sue?
Yeah, I was thinking about black holes. When they first came out in the 70s and told us about it, I've always been interested in them. But so I started thinking, it's like you said, as above, so below. You know, it's like we think the black holes are out there, but we're actually, in a sense, out there also. So they exist even on our Earth. Would that be a good assumption?
Yes, and you can have black holes the size of a pinprick. And they can be clustered around an area. You can have white holes as well. A little bit of a different spin on it. You understand that the Mayans, thousands of years ago, were given the idea that there was a massive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And this was part of their mythology, their legacy, etc. And then in the 70s, as you mentioned, when the scientifics began to discover the power of these so-called energy-eating holes, and they discovered that there was a massive black hole, or appeared to be a massive black hole, at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, there was a conundrum, a conflict between, well, how did these Mayans know thousands of years ago and build a calendar around, many calendars around that discovery, and how is it that we, with our modern telescopes, have only come to this conclusion? Of course, that in itself put a monkey wrench in the system's beliefs, but if that was all discussed at university level, it would mean a lot of people over the last 40 years would have been out of jobs. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it would have meant that the educational system and the university system, rather than being an arena for critical thinking and debate, where people paid for the privilege of debate, they now pay exorbitant fees for the privilege of being fed dead data and mind controlled to, let's say, and be penalized if they think outside of the dead data. So these are, one can see that decisions back in the 70s, 60s, 50s skewed the direction that you are approaching today. And just to add another bit of information on this, many people are saying from the events that are happening around the world, the protests and the conflicts of races and religions and things, that you are back in the 60s. It feels like you are in the 60s. Well, you are to a certain extent in energies that got started in the 60s when Pluto, the great transformer, that creates death of structures so that new things can be built, was in alignment with the radical revolutionary thinker Uranus. And that, let's say, set the energy from 1964 through the early 70s. Now, from 2011, approximately, 2012 exact, through next year, 2015, Uranus and Pluto are once again creating energy of radical change But this time, it's not about harmony and peace, because in the 60s, Uranus and Pluto were conjunct, or what we call married. They were at odds but married. They were together. Now they are in angry separation to some extent. They are challenging each other. Pluto says, Uranus, you think you are going to create revolution? Uranus says, Pluto, you think you are going to control us? You watch us. And so there's this conflict. This conflict is destabilizing systems and governments and all kinds of things, but what it's doing to the people of Earth is preparing you to really, really, really reconsider shocking, paradigm-shattering considerations, such as that black holes can cluster in your backyard, that your chakras can be used to operate as mini black holes. We can feel the wheels turning. We'll come back to you soon.
Okay.
Scott, do you want to ask us a question? It's your wheels we'll feel spinning there. You can pass if you want to.
Come on. Thank you, Peace. Yeah, I've got a couple things that have raced through my one, which I mentioned earlier, was like, I know our Milky Way galaxy and all of the planets, our solar system, affects us, and we do astrology through that. Do all the other galaxies affect us? Because obviously we have extraterrestrials from other galaxies, and they affect us. So the vibrations and all the planets and the energy, it's got to be all interconnected, and there's got to be some type of consciousness that is uniform throughout. Yeah, that's it.
What you are indicating is that you yourself, Scott, are on the verge of creating a bigger picture of reality. Now, have you ever seen a NSA or some space depiction of how many galaxies are out there?
Yeah, a little bit.
So that you know that even though your Milky Way galaxy is massive in size, massive, 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 in terms of, let's say, how far things are away. The moon's next door. The sun is across the street compared to how far away the other end of the galaxy is, because you are on one end of your galaxy, and the closest galaxy that you have rubbing up to you, at least from some scientific's point of view, would be the Andromedan galaxy. So, of course, there are interactions, but one would have to be, in terms of consciousness, very sophisticated to move even outside a solar system, let alone outside of one's native galaxy. And it is speculated that there are billions and billions and billions of galaxies. Remember, it takes 1,000 billion to make a trillion, and 1,000 million to make a billion. So it's a lot of galaxies, and there's a lot of speculation that all those stars have their own solar systems. So it's a little bit of a definite paradigm breaker to consider all of that space apparently being full of life. Yet, if you bring it back down to what we are saying, when your scientifics start to explore all the solid life, the matter, they find that matter is an illusion. And that the latest discoveries have concluded that on the subatomic level and on the level of empty space out in the cosmos, that nothing at all is empty. It just appears to be empty. It's really loaded with data. And that you have not yet invented machinery or evolved your senses to the point that you can identify and categorize that data Yet we would say you use that data all the time to navigate your lives. You think you use your cranium, you think you use the internet. Yes, on some level you do. You find things out in those ways, you process things in those ways. But you also operate more freely in this continuum of data, where you then create a version of identity to, let's say, that allows you to have the opportunity to explore reality. We'll leave it at that. Who else has a thought, a question?
Pete.
Yes.
This is George.
Yes, George.
I was at an astrology talk one time, and someone was exploring this idea about data, but they were doing it from the astrological zodiacal belt that we use. And they said, for instance, in the constellation of Virgo, there's a point in Virgo that used to be considered just a globular cluster of stars, but now they realize it's actually a cluster of galaxies. So there's hundreds of millions of galaxies in one point of Virgo. And they said that may be, if we look at it from that perspective, it may be because Virgo is about processing a lot of data and detail and all of that it can influence, but it's not the only influence, obviously.
Now, let's clarify this for people who may have difficulty picturing the cosmic terrain. If someone says to you, you know, if you go out the door and you walk down the path, if you walk a quarter of a mile, and there'll be a bit of a slope and it's grassy, you'll come to 3 big trees, and if you make a left-hand turn and walk another quarter of a mile through some more fields, you'll come across a stream, and then there'll be a bridge, and then there'll be a trail to a mountain. Most of you have no problem using your imagination to conjure up that picture, and then if you were to walk out the door and follow that picture, you would be able to. But it's different in space. First of all, when George is talking about the sign of Virgo, understand that the zodiac from the sign Aries through the sign Pisces begins with Aries and ends with Pisces. That each of the 12 signs depict a location or a direction in the heavens from Earth's point of view. And you can also use the zodiac from the moon's point of view. You can use the zodiac from the sun's point of view. That is called a heliocentric, yes. Now, we have explained to you that it appears historically that the one batch of ancient visitors, the Anunnaki, established a zodiacal map. The oldest zodiac, it appears, goes back to the Chaldeans, and Chaldea is where? Ancient Mesopotamia, yes, Anunnaki territory. And that when George says in the sign of Virgo, it means in that direction. Now, when you are on Earth, pretty much you can figure out north, south, east, and west. They stay constant because your feet are on the ground. You follow this? Mm-hmm. Which, the thing with the zodiac is that it moves as the Earth moves. So you cannot have your feet on the ground and always see the direction of Virgo. It comes around in a, what, George, 24-hour cycle, yes?
Exactly.
And so when you can see Virgo, whether it is on the horizon overhead or on the rising overhead or descendant, if you can see it, it means that when you look in the direction of Virgo, in that direction, not necessarily in your solar system or in your galaxy, but in that direction are what George is calling hundreds of millions of galaxies. And so your telescopes will look in a direction and see what? Ancient light, yes? Mm-hmm. Not even new light, because of the idea that you look at light in terms of what? Light years, light minutes, light hours, light seconds. You could get to a place in your biology, not instantly of course, but over time evolve to a capability that some visitors and other, let's say, cosmic dwellers have, where they are not trapped in perceiving reality according to speed of light. Things would be superliminal, meaning that there would be no distance, or they would see things that were not hampered by the factors of distance and time and space. You say, how is this possible? Let's go back to the animals. There are hawks, eagles, condors, and little sparrows who can occupy those life forms and be very advanced and sit on the tops of trees and be evolved enough in those little creature bodies that do not even have warm blood. Or are they warm-blooded? Yes. Oh, birds are.
Yeah, they are.
Yes,
All right.
yeah.
Those little bodies, and they can experience reality from ways that you humans are not yet evolved to. Consciousness can be very evolved and use a simple life form to access an experience. And we'll say this too, it's quite an experience to be an evolved bird. Quite an experience. Because you would understand the cosmos and earth and energies in a completely different way than you would as a human. So it's interesting, George, how Virgo does rule precision and data and information, and that it would be perceived that there would be so many galaxies located in a sign that was known for transference of higher mind and information. So that says that there's much more to the hidden design of reality than anyone understands. And we dare say that even if you were to meet the highest evolved visitors possible, if they were truthful with you, they would tell you they're still figuring things out. What else, George?
Well, I was also thinking, when you were talking about animals, there are some animals that can see beyond the spectrum. They can see in infrared.
Many.
They can see outside the visible spectrum. And I've read this, that if we could see beyond the visible spectrum, we could look up in Sagittarius, where the galactic center is, and the sky would be bright red, because we would see infrared, much more infrared light. You could pick out the galactic center immediately, because it would just fill up that part of the sky. So it's just interesting, if we could develop beyond the spectrum, if humans had that access or had that ability, I guess it's partly visualizing it.
It's not so much visualizing it, really. You are genetically altered humans.
Right.
That is part of the discovery that has been made in the last century, that something has fooled around with your DNA. And that was the premise of our work when we first began over 25 years ago. You are hybrid, you have been genetically altered. We use the analogy of 12 strands of DNA just to entice you and confound you a bit. But nonetheless, we brought up the idea earlier that the scientific cutting edge, on the verge discovery is that plants and animals are not so different from humans in their endeavors to want relationships, to want security, to bond, or once in a while to argue and fight and combat and just be full of Mr. Grumpiness or Mrs. Grumpiness. And so, in order to be managed, this is what you are coming to understand, that the human experiment has been limited to a large degree. And you are on the verge of discovering those limitations as a people. Certainly those of you who listen to us have been helping push that edge closer to the middle so people begin to recognize it, and this is what's happening. But the discoveries, once they start penetrating the various levels of reality, will change everything. So it is a matter of intention, George. Yes, the intent of an individual can overcome physical limitations. Recently, we were talking about someone who was at one of our sessions, and she shared the idea that Dowsers, the Dowsers Association, made the discovery that if one put blue painter's tape around their chair or in front of a computer, it worked effectively to block off the electromagnetic radiation. And then other discoveries have shown that putting railway spikes, metal spikes at the corner of a house and gridding it shuts off the electromagnetic radiation or lessens it. These discoveries show the power of the mind. This is probably the basis of all discovery of the hidden design of reality, the power of the mind. And in order for others to manage you as a species, to invade the living library, endeavor to create hybridization products and genetic engineering, etc., you had to be detweaked. You had to be turned down. Your visible spectrum availability was limited. Animals were not so invaded in terms of genetic manipulation because the animals were not perceived to be a threat to the reign and rule of colonizers. Yet the animals have been well aware of what's been going on for a long time. And the animals are affected by these colonizers because these colonizers have little regard for the living library in general. These colonizers want to do everything they can to control your perceptions, so that very few will begin to notice the energy of the galactic center. If and when this begins to transpire, that you can see the galactic energies, and they are not visible now. Understand the sun is approaching the galactic center, and 1 month from now it will have already been in alignment with the galactic center. Your best galactic vistas are in June, when the sun is opposite the galactic center. But we fully believe and invest in the idea that you are slowly opening. You are becoming more like the animals. They are not becoming like you. They are gifted creatures. And once you recognize the gifts that you have within you, perhaps you will quiet your mind and seek out quiet time, because that's what is needed to allow some of these processes to develop. More quietude. There's many components involved in this. We'll move on, but we'll comment on it throughout the night. Is there anything else you want to add, George? That was good data.
No, that's all.
Just everyone imagine that it's possible for you to begin to see the galactic center's infrared energy. Yes, George? That's
yes.
Infrared.
Infrared.
And that the animals that live around you will respond to you and send you the energies that will help you awaken. Because it is by focused intent that your reality is created. And it is this one key of the hidden design of reality that those who manage you do not want you to really figure out or to have the time to invest in it. Who has a question?
This is David.
David, welcome.
I recently drove up the 85-95 corridor and
North to Washington.
yeah, towards like to Philadelphia. And when I was up, it's funny, it seems like, I always say Fredericksburg, northward, it seems to be, you feel a weird energy. And then I think it was at the North Anna River where that quake was located, and driving, past Washington and Baltimore all the way up there. It was funny, I could just feel intensity there. And then I started thinking back, and I think it was a couple of years ago, somebody recently was mentioning they were in their house here when they felt that quake. And you guys, I think, have on occasion talked about it, but there appears to be a conflict between what I would say Northern Virginia area and Colorado. And I would, are these opposing parts of the U.S. government at same, and I don't know if this is related, but a lot of high-ranking military people, I mean, one was kicked out for supposedly playing cards dishonestly at some casino in Iowa or something. I mean, occasionally that stuff pops up in the media, and I thought, why would they throw somebody out that high? The highest ranking general or whatever since Vietnam or was killed in Afghanistan in an attack within the last couple of months. It seems to me that there's some opposing factions, and it seems like something will happen weird in Northern Virginia, and then something will happen weird in Colorado, and it seems to be a tit for tat. It's been quiet a little bit recently, but in terms of anyway, can you guys comment on that? And does that play into the things we've heard about Denver Airport? Is that purely just speculation, or is there some plan to relocate the governments to Colorado? Or I'm assuming this all is connected.
Well, the areas and the factions you point out are sort of just the tip of the iceberg in terms of hidden games that are going on between various players inside type of information. Your political people, those that come from a party and run for Congress and Senate and state types of things, they don't know so much unless they have been a contractor, the son of someone who's had big contracts, defense contracts, construction contracts. They are into second, third, and even fourth generation now of keeping it in the family, and then big money, and then keeping projects secret. But even such, it's very compartmentalized. This you must understand. Everything is so compartmentalized. You may look at the recent political elections and what happened. It looks as if there was a big shift. And your current president is angry, although he is a very angry man to start with. He's been scolding the country ever since he's been elected. He feels it's his job to talk down to people, or at least that's how he's programmed. And people are getting a little fed up with it. And now his anger has reached a new level that he dares to do this and dares to do that. And basically, what your president is currently doing is playing out his own frustrations at being left out of the loop and feeling used. And it happens to just about every president that gets in there. They reach a point when they realize they have no power, and that those in unelected positions have far more power than those in any type of elections. This creates factions, it creates separations. We do want you to understand that whether you are talking the US or any country around the world, within people, there is a desire to help one another. The human heart is designed to uplift the human experience, in general to care about humankind, and to integrate, to be fair and to understand. That is a core gift of humanity. Yet you are riled up today. And we've said a lot of the riling up comes from beings from other dimensions, the astral realms, who have found their way into your reality and interfere tremendously. Because humans cannot see them. So it's not just the galactic center, the radiated energy that you cannot see. It's so much. You cannot see the dire effects of Wi-Fi. You cannot see electromagnetic pollution. You cannot see radio waves, gamma waves. You cannot see beings who are all around you. You cannot see the dead. And of course, your nervous systems have been so entrained not to notice that it makes you easy to be manipulated. So let's say, David, that what you are sensing between Virginia and Colorado, you have psychic sensitivity as a human being. And let's say that, yes, you pick up on truths, and there are many conflicts going on that will affect the world, but there's not much any of you can directly do about it except take charge of your own life. The more each of you decides to think for yourself and to be autonomous in that, and to be content with the discoveries that redefine your world, and to be stable with those discoveries, the more you define a world that cannot be manipulated and be in fluctuation. So some of this energy going back and forth is a result of not knowing which side to take, not knowing what to do. And again, in every country of the world, there are very good people who want to do the right thing. But sometimes they think the right thing is fighting. Well, let's just build another bomb and we'll bomb them out of existence. People, that's not going to work. Understand that. That you are not going to fight your way out of this paper bag, and it's a big cosmic paper bag. Understanding that there are opposing forces that are fighting in underground tunnels, that are fighting for their beliefs, that are fighting for the right to be good, but that right to be good means, well, I'll kill who's bad. You're still caught up in the game. What else, David?
It looks like the Middle East. I was reading something today where somebody in Israel said, before it was political and ideological, now it is turning religious, and this has the potential to blow everything wide open there. I guess my question is, why is this now becoming, to what I could see, part of a global, this could create a global powder keg?
The powder keg, in terms of religious fanaticism, has grown to absolute extremes. And as you've noticed this last week or two, there have been problems at the ancient Mission Control Center of Jerusalem. About a class or two ago, there was a gentleman here who said, "What's going on with Jerusalem?" We explained that it is an old portal for control of what comes and leaves the heaven and earth domain. And there's fighting, let's say, to confuse the issue. Understand that some of these overlords have very little compassion for humankind. Just as if you ever notice people who have very little compassion for creatures, go out and kill them all and get them out of the way. So there are beings who have very little compassion for humankind, and they have purposely set up fanaticism and then set up belief systems that allow good people to do crazy things. Just last week or some such, two Christian, a couple, husband and wife, were killed over allegations that they burned a Quran. And within a short amount of time, and we believe this was in Pakistan or some such, a mob rule came. Now whenever you say mob, understand that there is a mindset in the mob that is far beyond the individual. You have mobs gathering now where? In
Misery.
Misery, yes. Misery could turn out to be full of misery if misery does not get it together. And misery could be leveraged, utilized to create a legend, a myth. Just like you mentioned the Denver airport. There's a truth around a lot of what is going on there. There is a tunnel system from Washington to the Denver area. But if you want to get people to stay away from something, you create a, quote, haunted monster kind of thing around it, and then they're afraid to go there. You follow, even psychically. And long time ago, when there were many black holes or caves that had portals in them, where if you walked into the cave or the vicinity of the cave, you would step into another reality, and once in a while creatures or different beings came in and out in order to keep explorers or people away. Those who used that portal would create a legend, create a mystery, create fear around it, and create sometimes an astral guardian or even an organic construct that would act as a local scare tactic to create roars or to create weird stuff or to flap big wings or something and to get people to run in fright. There's often very logical explanations for hidden mysteries. Now, where were we? We're on a roll here, explaining all these various pieces of yarn, and then
mob mentality.
Mob mentality. Thank you, Sue. That's good focus. Now, put all these pieces of string together and create a beautiful macrame. Mob mentality is when someone gets crazed and they start to use their emotionality, which is one of the greatest gifts you have, but that emotionality can also be one of your biggest downfalls. It is through your negative or paranoid or crazed emotions that you create a funnel for other beings to come in. You light yourself up a color, let's say. Now, if you could see mobs and see the energy around them, most of you would run. And then if you could see the astral creatures that the mobs create, you would run even further. Earlier, our vehicle passed around a picture and said, what do you see? You saw different things. If you looked closely, you could see perhaps a being, a very gigantic, large, massive being. Imagine that beings can sense the building of energy, whether it is a bunch of people who say, these Christians burned a Quran, let us kill them and burn them, and the couple was then burned in the factory where they had been building bricks for years. They were burned in the kiln. In Israel, you have more fanaticism going on. In Ferguson, you have fanaticism going on. In various parts of the world, you have these clashes. Forces like those clashes, because then they can come in and oversee an entirety of human gathering. Whether that entirety is at the Colosseum for gladiators fighting lions or fighting one another, or in the multitude of modern Colosseums today, where people watch games, scream and yell. Eat hot dogs, yes, of course, but there's also mob mentality. So these are important things to consider, and there are forces that want to rev up and rile up the mob mentality. Who has comment, insight?
This is Sue.
Yes, Sue.
And in Missouri, they are doing that because they have hired activists to come there and demonstrate, people who don't even live there.
Yes, and it's been reported quietly, though, but probably it gets around, nothing is quiet today, that there's oodles of Homeland Security people located, let's say, there, in that particular area, And that means that they are expecting problems, and they've been putting off the announcement because, let's say that you are a few weeks away, 3 weeks away, from what, George?
Uranus square Pluto.
Uranus square Pluto. And that would be on December
15.
15?
15, yes.
And that would be, again, 13, 14 degrees, 14 degrees.
Is it 13, 14? It might be 12, I'm not sure.
Perhaps it is 12. It's in that vicinity of Pluto and Uranus. Capricorn and Aries. The number would be about 12 or 13. This is very volatile for the USA. It says to us, and of course you very are well aware, that forces utilize the placement of planets to rev up energy or to escalate something or de-escalate, start a war, end a war. You are coming into a window in 3 weeks of the people confronting forces of power. And so there are those in power who will create their drama around this. And as Sue said, use their own agents of provocateur, their own players, to create a false action. So you have a very soft spot, a very vulnerable spot in the center of the country, and on top of that, Missouri and that particular area, it's not so far from the Mississippi River and all of that, and it's not so far from what is called the New Madrid Fault. Good telepathic receiving. We were searching for the name we like when someone then fills it in. That kind of volatility on the emotional level of stirring up crowds is already drawn a mob manager from the ethers, from the astrals, let's say. And then that kind of pressure, the Earth is going to feel it. The Moon is going to feel it. Other galaxies feel everything that you do. Everything is connected. Who has a thought? Comment?
This is David again.
Yes, David.
Just it's something you just said, like when those horrible atrocities happened in the civil war in Bosnia and in Rwanda, are those places chosen and manipulated to allow certain entities? I mean, I realize everything has multiple purposes, but when that kind of stuff is going on, I mean, I was actually in that area of Europe a year after it ended, and some of the people I talked to said that...
In Rwanda?
No, in former Yugoslavia.
Bosnia, yes.
And they, some of the people said that there were rumors going around that before the war started there, that there were German and American Secret Service agents in there stirring up trouble or messing around. So I'm assuming that was, all you need to do is have one do one to another, and then the genie gets out of the bottle. When they pick a place like that, I'm sure there's multiple reasons for it, and
what would be some of those reasons?
I'm assuming that when you have that kind of horror going on, that it allows, it creates a portal or an opening for energies to get in here. I think there's political reasons so that they can, and I think with Bosnia it was about expanding NATO outside, to become the world's police force. I mean,
listen to this. The participants, people, the natives of Bosnia or Rwanda, would have had some sort of need on the soul level to participate in such massacre, let us say, such bloody conflict. What would that need be? It could be different for each location, and then very different for groups of individuals. In Rwanda, let's say that it was basically tribal warfare, violence on violence, etc. Old violence. And let's say that tribal warfare makes no difference of skin color. Tribal warfare goes way, way back. And when people have a soul lesson about being destroyed by a tribe, a neighboring tribe, they will come in and work that out until they say, I'm not fighting my neighbors anymore. I don't care if they are purple and I am orange. That's it. I don't care if they worship rocks and I worship flowers. I let people live in peace. Then the whole thing stops. But on a soul level, there's agreements for each person to come in and rise above their own tit-for-tat kind of mentality, and yet once the mob starts, once the killing starts, people get in fear. And then they lose their minds because other forces come in and they compel people to do things that later on they are ashamed of. How do they get compelled to do things? Because they lose their centeredness of value, they become over-emotional, they leave their body, they get the adrenaline thrill, something else comes in, runs the body on a massive level, and then the body gets stuck with the consequences. Now, in Bosnia, one of the out pictures of that war, the destruction there was a tremendous number of orphaned children. And the backstory is that orphanages were being packed with these displaced children, and then the children were disappearing. We said to you earlier that if you can get children when they are very young and program them, control them, take over their belief systems and their behavior, you have them pretty much until certain cycles occur, usually in a human. You start to rebel and you start to put things together on a bigger level at about Uranus opposite Uranus, anywhere between 39 and 42 years old. Same thing happened in Rwanda, lots of displaced children, and look what's happening with the Ebola epidemic in Western Africa, of which many people are reporting it is a false flag epidemic. Roger talked about it a few classes ago, saying that those which were getting Ebola were those who were receiving vaccinations. And also the speculation on Ebola is that they are not fighting the virus present in the body, and the body is mimicking certain other diseases that have a close resemblance to what has been labeled Ebola. Again, these are very confusing times. To figure it all out requires an initiation by each of you into clarity of mind and higher states of consciousness. And then often, when you are presented with the truth, it is so outside your belief systems that it becomes very disturbing and stress-creating. And then you create too much stress, and the body begins to lose its stability and its continuity. And just to review what our vehicle suggested earlier, it is important for every single one of you, those listening to us currently in the now and those out there in the future, you must be able to manage your stress. If you think that you are not under stress, you are completely delusional. It is not possible to be alive today and not telepathically and directly encounter all of the conflicting ideas and the paradigm-shaking belief systems that are wanting to burst forth and unfold. So be aware, quiet time, and as our vehicle suggested, turn to aromatherapy. A few pleasant smells, a sniff of lavender, very relaxing, but truly, chamomile, orange, rosemary can be utilized to quickly clear the brain, dissolve brain fog, and get you thinking clearly. And as she said, take a little bit and put it on a piece of flannel or piece of cotton or whatever, and sprinkle the smell on, carry it around with you in a little plastic bag, and take a sniff throughout the day. This is very legal. It is very legitimate, and it will help you feel quite stabilized. And you will notice it is subtle energy, but the certain aromas trigger certain feelings. This is why we are digressing a bit here, but we know it. We always like to meander. This is why you have the idea of, quote, comfort food. Yes?
Yes.
And you say, oh, my comfort food was this. If you live in the South, it is grits, yes? Or it can be collards, it can be grits. If you live in other parts of the country, it can be what? Pizza, yes. Sauerkraut. Let's hear a few other comfort foods. Macaroni and cheese, yes.
Potato salad.
Potato salads, yes. Okay. So what happens is when you know that you are going to get a comfort food kind of thing, you say, well, I might gain a pound or two, then perhaps you do. But you feel secure. It gives you the reminder of, while mom or dad or family or locations were stable when I ate this food. So if I eat this food now, I'm going to get the feeling that everything is like it used to be, stable and secure. Yes?
Yes.
But even smelling those foods and not eating them can give you the same benefit. And we would say your olfactory abilities, that would be the ability to use smell, is more powerful than ever before. It is something that the animal kingdom has in great abundance that you have shut down. And all the things that have been shut down in you, they are slowly coming online, because the language of the DNA, the code of the DNA, is being slowly restored. In some it can happen quickly, in others it will be a long, long haul. Let's move on. Who has comment?
This is Roger.
Yes, Roger, loud and clear.
About the Anunnaki,
Yes.
do they experience joy from the standpoint of we get up in the morning and we look forward to going through the day to create a better way of feeling? In other words, we are drawn to act in ways that we would create better feelings. So I'm just wondering, do they experience joy? Or what motivates them to go through the day?
Of course, they would have the range of emotions that you and the animals would have, and plants as well. That range and how they would manifest it would be predicated on their own soul evolution in their life form. In other words, a life form that's going to occupy a hawk is going to have certain maximum limitation within the form of the hawk. Just as a life form that occupies an energy that occupies a human life form is going to have a minimum and a maximum extension. Same too with the Anunnaki. And let's say this. The main problem with these Anunnaki, and they know it, is that they are stuck. And they are not so evolved, even though they have very advanced understanding of reality and the use of advanced technologies. Their soul evolution is stuck in an empire, a kingdom that has focused for too long on divide and conquer to find their power. One could say that there's great remorse within the ranks of the Anunnaki as to the blowback and the problems that have now come back to them. Look at some of your current political leaders. Without naming names, you have some people that are going to be running for president in the next couple of years, and you have a current president that wishes it was all over. And then you have former presidents, some that show their faces and pretend everything's fine, and others that don't want you even to see them. Who looks vital, healthy, and happy?
None of
Oh, no, I was like, none of that.
Yeah, none of
None of the above.
There you have it. Multiple choice, and you knew the answer. None of the above. Now, if all of the beings above were and are extensuations of beings who want to manipulate you and control you, take it up a few other dimensions and imagine the angst and the lack of flow of vitality that is coming through some of these beings. So can they experience joy? They have experienced enough joy, some of them, to know it's possible. But just like a human who used to live a joyous life and be more happy and free when they were younger, and then as they've moved through various life transits, they didn't navigate those transits so well, and they became small-minded or selfish or victimized, and then they want to victimize others. What would happen to an individual like that? They would become sick. Their energy field would collapse. They would not be healthy. They would push away friends. They would lose the joy that they once had, but they would know that they had joy and know what it is. And for a human, it might be 5 years ago when they had joy, or 25 years ago. For the Anunnaki, it's just larger batches of time and larger egos and larger chunks of time and larger empires to rationalize. We have suggested that the Anus are in empire collapse, and that's going to affect your world. You just had a G something, G20 or government's 20, whatever, meeting someplace around the world. What do you think they were meeting about? We don't want you to answer. We'll talk about it after recess. But the pressure is very great to keep things quiet while everything is imploding. That doesn't bode very well for harmonious outcomes. So everyone feels that they are on the verge of something very big. All right, let's now move further into some discussions that we were carrying on. Who would like to ask a question?
Ask the piece.
Yes, this is Scott.
Yeah, I was thinking, because of evolution and because of all the races, it seems like there's still conflict. It still seems like there's animosity. There seems to be unrest. I mean, what do we look forward to? I mean, if we have millions of years to catch up, what's happening? What's going to change? What's going to change?
What's going to change, and the only thing that can change, would be people's perceptions of reality. Right now, you point out very correctly that in many parts of the world, there's a lot of conflict about individuals being right over beliefs, often over whose God has supremacy over someone else's God. And that is a type of control, a type of lockdown. Beliefs are agreements that you make with reality, and reality is so conforming and so friendly that it will generally outpicture whatever you believe. And then if you believe something, you will usually be drawn to the area, geophysically, where those beliefs can be most easily supported or played out. And we agree with you that it looks as if various parts of the world are a centimeter away from creating self-immolation or the destruction of others. And you have come so close, time and again, to big destructions, especially in the Middle East. Yet just as the stock market is falsely manipulated and propped up, it's inching up to 18,000 1,000 now. Reality can be propped up, and probes can be shifted, and nuclear activities especially can be stopped, locked down. And there are, let's say, those in watch mode who are vigilant about being telepathically linked to your thought processes. And there are those who would be stationed in nuclear facilities around the world, and they would appear to be human, and their entire purpose is to operate on a superhuman capacity without revealing any of their skills, meaning by presence only. They can read the thoughts of others who would be led to create nuclear disaster out of turn. Things are very, very complicated, Scott. Now, what's going to change, and how could it change? We said that it's possible to have a viral awakening, a massive shift in consciousness, ripple over the planet in a few days. This would have nothing to do with the internet, although it might start on the internet, meaning that mainstream media may gloss over something, and mainstream media is completely controlled. They know that they will be shut down and someone will lose a job if they mention Fukushima or ancient artifacts or discoveries on Mars or ancient visitors. It's forbidden. It's forbidden. Most people want a job, not their integrity. Most people are willing to compromise on their integrity because they rationalize, well, I have to do this for this. So bottom line, they will all pay. What you are asking about, Scott, is it's possible for an energetic to occur on a purely cellular level, where you would look at as if the God particle within humankind has awakened to give people a God's eye view of themselves, their country, their beliefs, and their reality. How do we describe this? It would be like an instant knowing. For many people, it will be humbling. It will be awe-inspiring. They will know something from the inside that could possibly force them all to lay down all of their violence, all of their anger, and to feel as if the mind of God and the eyes of God are on them and within them. We know these sound like very dramatic hyperboles of sorts. They are the best way we can use to describe something that once it occurs within humankind and starts to ripple and trigger you off, you may get used to eventually this kind of information. And people who are able to integrate it and handle it will find that this kind of direct knowledge, empirical knowledge, is a normal way to interact with reality. What it would do is to humble all beings, because it would equalize you pretty quickly as creatures of the cosmos, as co-creators of existence, as extensions, each and every being, of a prime force of creativity. This is not a man or a woman. It's a force. It's a presence. And this presence is here all around all beings all the time. It's just that you are shut off in your perceptions from experiencing it. So the shift that would stop everyone in their tracks, stop the violence, stop so much, would be a perceptual change that would happen on the inside, a timing mechanism. We know it's possible for it to occur, it's likely for it to occur, and yet it's also dicey. We are not certain if it will occur, because it is up to certain players and dynamics to make discoveries, to bring these discoveries forward. It's not up to we pleiadians to enforce or to ensure this kind of awakening. In the larger cosmos, we are all on the journey of experience. What we figure out, of course, depends on what we are willing, all of us, to release. What else, Scott?
I got to think on that.
Good. We know you are a big thinker, so we always give you an answer that would give you something to think further about. Who has a question?
I've got a question.
You are?
Leonora.
Say it again.
Leonora.
Leonora? That's a very old-fashioned name, you know. Welcome, Leonora. What would you like to know?
I'm just wondering who is behind all these attacks on people here, or just not just people, the inhabitants of this planet, like the things coming down from the sky, the EMFs, the chemtrails, trying to make us into robots. I mean, what's going on? Why? What's the agenda?
So you are asking about EMFs and chemtrails, the rise of robots. What's the agenda? It's pretty obvious that in your solar system, Earth stands out as being unique, yes?
Yeah.
It's pretty, it's got a lot of water, and if you have the chance to ride around on Earth, whether on a bicycle or a horse or an automobile, you recognize there's some beautiful land and great real estate and lots of resources, and it's quite habitable. And there are those who feel as if that the humans have overrun the planet. And it is very true. You have a lot of humans on the planet, and a large majority of them soil the nest. That is the truth. We are not pointing names at any types or beings, but we tell the truth. And humans tend to get caught up in the experience rather than in their duty to be stewards of Earth. So there are statistical studies that have happened on Earth, and beings who look at Earth and they see that left unchecked, it will not be long before, within a few decades, some project to 2030, 2040, that the humans would overrun the planet with a lack of sanitation and a lack of consciousness. So there are forces, some that want to control the population. Chemtrails certainly do this. They block out solar radiation. They also block out solar communication. Without solar communication, many humans will lose their mind. The EMFs are purposely designed to mess up your electromagnetic energy field so that you are more easily managed, you are confused. And the GMOs, of course, are a slow form of suicide, along with wireless technology and cell phones. So, who's after this? Obviously, it is the depopulation culling program. Doesn't make any difference which country it comes from. It's humans who have been given ideas, and they are not far thinkers. This is one thing you lack as human beings. You lack this extension beyond the moment. And you have been programmed recently with computers and cell phones and all other devices to push a button and to have instant response. You can go buy a heater today and plug it in the wall and push a button. Within a minute, hot air is blasting out at you. It's far removed from having to gather wood and have it dry, and then find a place that it would be safe to have a fire and build a fire. We are not advocating that you go back to that experience, but we are saying that modern humans are programmed and conditioned to have an instant response to what they want. This has shortened your span of understanding so that you don't look far beyond the immediacy of what you can push a button for to receive instant gratification. This is also another form of dumbing humans down so that you are more manageable. All of this occurs, Lenora, because there are many beings who understand that humankind is on the verge of a massive paradigm shift, and that it could occur that crisis, one crisis upon another, upon another, upon another, pushes the human genome to such a degree that it fires off something called a fail-safe mechanism within the human genome, that rather than have you move to slow self-destruct, which you are doing now without awareness, that some code inside, we call it Enki's gift, ripples out, and everyone, or a large majority of the planet, has a massive new understanding of reality. We can not describe what that new understanding would be, because it would be a collection of all of the people of the planet recognizing something bigger about the story that they believe in, that has come from inside. We believe some of your prophecies and some of your books speak of these potentialities. This would be something worth fighting over. It would stimulate a cosmic war of sorts. We are suggesting that the Anunnaki know of this time, and the ancients from long ago foresaw this time as being very dangerous in terms of the players coming to a new level of understanding how the game in existence is played. Anything else, Lenora?
And just the Anunnaki, are those people, are they around us as people, like that you might see in your everyday life?
Are they around you as people in everyday life?
I don't understand if they're still here now.
Say it again, please.
Are they still here now, or did they?
They wouldn't necessarily so much be around you as people, because their numbers, in terms of how many they are versus how many you are, would be vastly different. They are basically long livers, some to millions of years, because of their understanding of chemistry and what it would take to alter a body to live longer through substances and water and various other plants and things of this nature. Some of the Anus are very evolved biologists, botanists, and they would understand what it would take to create components that would extend their life. In this capacity, gold has also been used for life extension. Now, what would be among you would be some of their creations that would look like people, that would act like people, but they could be advanced organic robots. Today you are in a period, and it's really going to splat itself forward next year, of how the robots, just like the drones, are suddenly everywhere and very advanced, not clunky, very advanced. And people are going to start getting the creep factor. First they'll laugh, they'll think it's funny, but then they will not be comfortable with it. So all of this is sort of coming forward, and as people recognize it, they will start to activate inside. Some people who have encountered these human-looking tall blondes that appear to be human, but they may be organic robots or clones or some such, they have felt strange. And you know, some humans are telepathic, and there are some humans who can hear the thoughts of others. Most people do not carry on a conversation between one another on a telepathic level. You chat on phones, you type things out, you talk verbally, etc. But some of these organic robotoids talk to each other on a telepathic level, and if an astute human is in their vicinity, the human may hear them say, "That human is reading us." Now imagine if you were walking down the street, George Ward, or you were in a cafe, and you saw two comely looking people, or three, and they were attractive enough and vital enough to get your attention, that they wouldn't necessarily have the same vibrational rate as other humans. They would stand out slightly, if you noticed. And imagine that you caught the drift of their telepathy, and that they would be talking telepathically about you because you started noticing them. That could freak you out a little bit, yes, George Ward? Yes, this has happened. Where would you find these people? They're not going to be your neighbors, unless, of course, you are living in the Washington, D.C. area. Then living around the capital area, or, well, here you do have Research Triangle Park, and that is a deep consideration for sort of an announcement that says, here we are. You call it the Triangle, and many people have pointed to the shape of a triangle as being a signature of some of the visiting ETs. So we would venture to say it's possible to have some around this area, just to keep an eye on others who think that they might pull a quick one, yet next door to them would be living telepathic organic robotoids, watching their every move, particularly if they were involved in secret research, nuclear facilities, and any kind of pharmaceutical discoveries, and anything having to do with things that are underground. Whether your mind can conceive of it or not, the earth is not hollow per se, but it has long been colonized, it has been tunneled, and just because you can't imagine living underground does not mean that others don't live there. You understand that?
Yes.
Yes. So, your questions are very good, all of them. And it shows to us that you are thinking, which is what we want you to do. Because once you start thinking, you do give off an energetic signal, and no one's going to come bother you in general unless you really hit a gold mine. But once you start thinking, you are outside of the realms of control, and you start seeing through things. And this is part of everyone's sole purpose on the planet, because this is humankind's mission during the changeover years, 2013 through 2027. Break out, break through, and see a new dawn about what reality really is. And the more you are attached to things being a certain way, the more stuck you are going to be. So you are all victorious when you can ask questions. And then it's not that we want to answer all your questions so that you are all happy. We answer your questions so that you think in larger terms. You are all safe, and you create your safety by your intention. And it's your auric field, building that auric field every day, that creates your safety and protection. There's all manner of weirdness out there. And there's all manner of black holes opening and mini black holes and portals and strange things. And this is what's upsetting many of the governmental leaders, is that the fabric that has held your paradigm together, your belief system, your agreements, it's all coming apart. It's shattering. It's fraying. It's got holes in it. And so when the G20s or G7s or 8s, whichever numbers agreeing to meet, when they have their secret meetings, and they hide things from each other, so it's not like 20 of them get together and say, guess what's going on? Only 3 or 4 may tell each other what's really going on, and they will keep others in the dark. But the agreement they all have is that it's unraveling, and that strange portals are opening and weird things are coming through, and that the culling problem and the control over humankind, it's working in some capacity, but in another capacity it's a complete failure. Some people are dying, some people are getting sick, while others are adapting, evolving, getting smarter, and seeing through things. This is why the cell phones track everything that you are doing and saying, and they can tell by running your conversations through algorithms who's who and what's what. Lenora, we hope that that gives you a little larger picture.
Yes.
Our personal advice to you: relax, trust yourself, settle down. It would do you a lot of good to believe that everything will work out for you and for the planet far better than you can imagine. And that sometimes, as a person coming into higher consciousness, you have to hear about some dire things so that you process them through and cancel them, and that you end up choosing a probability of safety, of harmony, and good excitement. Who has a question?
Peace, this is Karen.
Karen, welcome.
Talking about a paradigm shift and everything that's going on, I was thinking about a lot of things, and I was thinking this could possibly be a way that this could happen, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on that. All these underground cities that are set up as far as Washington goes, and then there's one in North Dakota and under Denver, and I believe I don't know what I've read, they could be really underground cities with there are a lot more technology than they're letting us know that's going on.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's far more advanced than surface people recognize.
And I believe it's set up for the elite. It's not for us. And that our technology is set up on the grid up here where it could be totally knocked out. And like you said, water's set up here. Our medicines are all set up on computers. Our telephones, our light, our heat, everything, and we're all under their control. If they wanted to knock us out, they could, and in a matter of days, we wouldn't have heat, we wouldn't have water, we wouldn't have electricity, we wouldn't have phones, we wouldn't have anything. And
so it appears, on one level,
right,
that those who live on the surface are highly vulnerable.
right, and the elite would go underground and live and have everything to whatever they needed.
And how excited do you think they are about going underground?
Well, I think, the rich are rich, and they always have been. They're the 1%, and, everybody else is vulnerable to that. But that could totally set a paradigm shift, and which could be, our survival instinct, which could totally turn humanity around, and which could totally, turn the whole world. Instead of us attacking each other and killing each other, we could turn around and help each other, which could totally set the whole world,
That's a wonderful speculation. And do you know that this is what they are saying from one end of the other in Buffalo, that just received anywhere from 5 to 7 feet of snow? They are saying how astounded and marvelous it has been that under these dire situations, help is coming from all directions. Now, the trick is to keep it up. You've all been in weather situations, and yes, it does tend to pull out the best in humans, and people get out their tools and they want to help, and that is the highest level of humanity. It truly is. To reach out to help each other, and when you help someone else, you know what happens? You release feel-good hormones from the inside.
Right.
Particularly, you release something called oxytocin. And this oxytocin can come about from smelling good smells, eating good food, gently rocking the body, or doing good acts for others. When this chemical component is released in the body, it takes the human experience into pleasure. And once you get into pleasure and gratification, it's a whole nother reality. Now, usually these kind of situations happen when the grid goes down temporarily, when the weather is inclement, and when people band together. Then what happens afterwards is usually the grid goes back up, and people go back to listening to or watching the news.
And fear.
And then what happens is their worldview shrinks, yet they think it's expanded by the little screen. Now, we are not saying the grid has to be down to bring cooperation. But if you start picturing any type of cooperation and calling forth the higher image of what humans can move to, then this is contributing to that creation. Because bottom line is, thoughts have power.
Right.
And it doesn't make any difference if you are the chambermaid or the president or the CEO. If you have focused intention and clear vision for the benefit of all, that's going to take precedent over niggly, cheating greed that's going to want to destroy everyone. This is the tipping point for ordinary, unaccomplished people to recognize that they have just as much power as someone who rules the world, because the world is the world is determined by a process of thought creation. You stick with what you are thinking. You all have the potential to be pleasantly surprised. That does not mean that there are no lumps and bumps to go through. We explore those lumps and bumps often so that you cancel them out, or so that you have a clear, unidealistic picture of what you are dealing with, and yet still find the courage to believe your own truths from inside and to believe in goodness in yourself and in others. What else, Karen?
Just, fear and from the media, and if you concentrate, it's just to shut you down, and that's,
If you can recognize that, and if other people recognize that, this is a huge victory, because 20 years ago no one did, hardly anyone did. And 10 years ago more and more were discovering it, and now today people know they are being driven by fear. So what they are doing, and it's painful to them, so they are flipping to distractions that create pleasure, which are often self-destructive. That's the problem today, is too many people are creating self-destructive choices because they feel disempowered, they feel disgusted over being lied to. So they check out. Again, the body's center is one of the centers of the brain, is organized by pain and pleasure. This is not the amygdala where you have fight or flight. This is called the acumen nuclei or something like this, and it is a pain-pleasure zone. And a lot of things on the planet are psychologically being used to manipulate people to check out and choose pleasure because the pain seems so overwhelming in the media, but not necessarily in personal experience. Would you agree?
Just fear of change in jobs, fear of
Yeah.
different way people look. Or
Yes, and understand this, Karen. Everyone is telepathic to a degree or another, and you get into those highly telepathic states, and you are informed in the dream state. That is when everyone sort of really gets equalized, and where you get to know things. And people of Earth know that another shoe is going to drop, and they don't know what or how. They know that they're here on the planet for big, big, big stuff, and yet they are terrified that big, big stuff is going to rock their world and change it. That creates a bit of an accordion effect, in and out, in and out. If you don't know how to play the accordion, it just sounds like noise. Yes, and so this is on a cycle, let's say on a psychological, spiritual, psychic level. This is what's confusing people. This knowledge that they get in the dream state, they're not able to articulate it, but they are part of the mass experience. And then day-to-day life, they look around and it feels very confusing, and it doesn't necessarily jive with this other part of the brain. And of course, those who understand how the brain operates and run psyops, this is exactly what they want, to keep you confused, especially with devices and electronically conveyed data. This is the conundrum. This is why it's so important to take charge of your life and to have some quiet time to integrate. And that does not mean sleep state. It means a state of just quietude to build the neural networks so that you can get in touch with the intuition and learn to follow it. The intuition and the integrity of the body. Remember, once you honor your body, once you like your body and love your body and feel privileged to have one, well, no matter what it looks like, once you start that process, it starts miraculously working with you. Anything else, Karen?
no, thank you.
Who has a question?
I have a question.
This is Laura. Welcome.
Thank you. I have a question about the Anunnakis. You mentioned earlier that they're in empire collapse.
Yes.
And I like to think it's because so many people are waking up. But I wonder if it was just their karma or their history that this is their time to fade away.
We would say
fighting against their own fate.
We would say more the second than the first. They are not losing power because people are waking up, though they are. They have reached their own crossroads, their own turning point, and they have getting what you call the karmic blowback. They live long time, millions of years, so it's taken them a long time to create this accumulation. Just as the accumulation of an intelligence within a fly or a ladybug would happen dramatically different than it would for consciousness within a human because of the lifespan difference. Yet it would still be just as valid. So what you must understand is that the lifespan difference of some of the Anunnaki, the long livers, they have boxed themselves into a corner, Laura, and it is their time, their sunset years. They have created a lot of havoc, and they are, in some regard, collapsing in and on themselves. Yet there are others within the Anunnaki system who are relieved. They are not all this way. Their leaders who have come to the planet are few in number, considering how many humans there are. Visiting Anunnaki in ancient times, well, the first few batches had less than 1,000. And they, let's say, utilize life forms here to create workers for that very reason. They did not have a large population to draw upon to repopulate other worlds. They invade other worlds by incorporating and adapting various life forms to do their work for them. They create a type of indenturedism. Some would call it slavery. We would say it depends on your point of view. You are all co-creators. We also dare to say that it is worth your considering that some of you have been and are extensions of some of these Anunnaki on a soul level. Remember that your soul does not have an affiliation towards race or gender or cosmic location. Your soul is on an ever-expanding journey of gathering experience and information to, let's say, fulfill the joy of Prime Creator. And what will unfold for many of you in 2015 is a closer feeling within you of what it is like to be an Anunnaki, or to have been under their tutelage on the planet, particularly in the Middle East, or even in the Far East, or even in here in the early years, long ago, of North America. We're doing our best to expand the field of consideration on this. What else, Laura?
No, thank you. That's a very complete answer.
Did we answer you good?
Yes.
Good. You're all asking good questions, very good questions, because it means you are thinking in larger terms. Just remember, you are not going to go into space war and kill off these Anunnaki with their behavior. They did bring, according to their records, nuclear weapons to your Earth long, long ago. And according to their records, the one who brought nuclear weapons to your Earth eventually caused a lot of trouble. He was eventually banished to Mars. And eventually, after he spent a long time on Mars in isolation, this would have been after the destruction, the face on Mars supposedly was built in his honor.
Okay.
It was a long time ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago. So the story is very, very complex. And that being who died a long time ago as an Anunnaki could easily have human extensions of itself all over the planet who would be vaguely connected. Who has a question?
Peace, this is Dorsey.
Yes, Dorsey.
You're talking about the
Welcome.
soul, and that triggered a question I had.
What when we say the soul, how do you picture it?
I feel like, well, the soul, I guess, is sort of like in your body, because they say there are thousands of cases where when a person dies, or I guess you could say past change states, that you're 21 grams lighter. And I want to say, is that true? Because they say there are thousands of documented cases.
We would say that it's not so much the soul, it is the life force. And the life force is predicated and made up of your awareness, your consciousness, your dorsiness. Do you follow this? Mm-hmm. That is not going to be destroyed. That is what leaves the body, and it has a presence in the body. It has a presence in plants, in animals. When a plant dies, it looks different, does it not? And if you were to weigh that plant, it would weigh less than it did when it was alive. People would say, well, it's the water content. Well, originally it's the life force content. Then, yes, things start to deteriorate and they dissolve. So the soul is really located outside of the body. And the life force is part of this soul. And it stays connected to the soul and then occupies various life forms. And when it's finished in the life form, that part of the soul or that consciousness goes back to a central force. It is not dissolved in that central force. It is an aware contributor of that central force, somewhat like a beehive. Do you understand?
Okay.
One could think of the soul as a beehive, and all the various bees, extensions of that hive. So that hive has its own intelligence, yet ventures far and wide and brings back data and food and nourishment to that hive. That's an example. What else do you want to know?
I was thinking about for as like health, because somebody does a lot of health issues, and I heard, I've been reading up on for as having a pH, a body's pH of 7.0 neutral.
Yes.
To help, that'll keep you on a more of a healthier state.
It appears to be very important.
And I didn't know if you could elaborate on that.
It appears that on this very basic level of science, that if the body moves to an acidic state, it is thrown off balance, and the unfriendly bacteria, the anaerobic bacteria, all these things will grow to greater proliferation and create problems in a highly acidic state. The problem is lots of the best foods you eat and the things you do throw the body to acid. So by moving towards more alkaline, the soil needs to be for certain substances more alkaline, although there are some things that like to grow in acidic soil, such as hydrangeas, for example. They like things more acidic. Now, the internal terrain of the body is affected by the outside environment, particularly by food and also by your beliefs. So you can eat the best of diet. You eat a lot of vegetables and you live on coconuts, you are going to have a very alkaline type of body. But if you are a worrier and you watch a lot of TV, and you eat the best of diets and it's all organic, but you invest then in worrying, worrying will turn your body acidic just as fast as too many beers or too much alcohol. You understand?
Yes.
Or too much sugar. So it is moderation that's very important. Don't think of yourselves as sinners. Holidays are coming up. You are going to want to dip into some of these more acidic types of foods. Just remember, keep it in balance. Pay attention to how you feel. Notice if you eat too much. You can say, well, I ate too much. I loved every bite, but I can't do that every day. And if you start to create, I want to be in moderation and balance, the inner system will work with you. Our vehicle was sharing with you some tips to stay on the alkaline side, lemon water and aloe vera and coconut water. All of this can shift completely the inner terrain. Also, there is a doctor named Dr. Marciniak. He's been a major contributor to discoveries in health, and he has reported, as have others, on the power of sodium bicarbonate, which translates as baking soda. Baking soda has the arm and the hammer on the cover, yes?
Mm-hmm.
That indicates how strengthening it is to the system. And there are those who have explored this protocol using the alkalizing neutral techniques of baking soda to rid themselves of cancer. Now remember, what works for one person is not always going to work for another, because there are contradictions that occur. Someone can say, well, I did all the baking soda and I alkalized and I did this and this, but then their psychological state or their beliefs may damage what they're doing. And when it comes to getting well, health issues and feeling really good and getting the body in tip-top shape, what prevents it? Often are beliefs about what is possible, beliefs about what you deserve, beliefs about what members of your family experienced as health issues, and then you say, well, therefore this is in my family, and all medical people will say, well, do you have diabetes, do you have cancer, do you have high blood pressure in your family? People will say, well, yes, 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 and then, well, that's fine, but that does not mean that you will create that unless you really believe that you are your parent. And some people do believe they are their parents because they love their parents so much they can't separate themselves from their parents. They think it is a betrayal to recognize flaws in their parents. We'll say this to you, your parents are people. And some people have been unfair to their parents because they saw a few flaws. And the parents weren't perfect enough. And other people have parents with so many flaws they won't refuse to see them, and they make their parents over perfect. Bottom line is to look to yourself to say, what do I want? What do I intend as a human being to experience? When you have a health issue, it is always a sign that it is time to change something. Change who you're interacting with, change your beliefs, change your habits, certainly change what you are eating. Often you have to change where you are living, you change your sleeping habits. All of this is under fire. Number of classes David has brought up how this insomnia epidemic is taking over. Well, it's not just adults. Children can't sleep either. And parents are running ragged, wondering what to do with children who are totally overstimulated, and they've completely lost their sense of circadian rhythms. A lot of this is too much light in the evening hours, too much electricity, too much stimulation. The body is tricky. It's easy to get one, or it used to be easy to get one, but just because you have a body does not mean you know how to operate it. Remember that. You are all learning, and you will continue to learn in this capacity. So, balancing the body in terms of neutralizing or alkalizing the pH gives you a big advantage. But also then neutralize your thoughts and observe what you are thinking and say to yourself, is this in my best interest to think this, or does this create an upset within me? What else, Dorsey?
That's it. Appreciate it.
So, in the course of expanding your consciousness, would you say, Dorsey, that you have changed some of the habits that you have had in terms of how you experience your body?
Yes, I do.
Good. And would you say that as you've adapted these changes, whether it is using Himalayan salt or whatever, that you have noticed a difference in it's easier to be in the body and to have a human experience?
Yes, I mean, I feel good, energetic. I don't really have any sickness.
Good.
And it's not like I'm always positive, so I just feel like I feel good about myself.
Those are really important keys. And Sue says that all the time too, yes?
When I go to bed at night,
What do you say, Sue?
I cross my chest sometimes and I say, I love you. I love my body. I'm grateful for what it does for me.
Does you really good to acknowledge the omnipotent power of the creative force, because that creative force is what rules the Anunnaki and all life forms and all galaxies and all things. Once you realize how massive it is rather humbling to know that you are part of it and that you can see it. Now, you're going to be challenged, of course, but you understand the keys of empowerment. That is gratitude, clear thinking, good laughter, and changing whatever it is that doesn't work for you, slowly, so that you can be having a more fulfilling experience in your human body. That's what it's all about. And as you do this, you rewrite the rules of the game for all players, even into other galaxies. Knowing that you are on the verge of some major discoveries, major revelations, major announcements, major considerations. Be patient. Be autonomous. Think the best. Create the best. We are very enthusiastic about the futures, the possible futures that you can encounter, because they are soul-fulfilling on multiple levels and far better than you can conceive and imagine. Hold your thoughts open for those probabilities to manifest smoothly, easily for humankind. That said, it's been our great pleasure. Good afternoon.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.